Yeah, ready?
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
I'm doing it, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Trevor,
Okay.
we're ready to commence proceedings.
Right, okay. Well, welcome everybody to today's Planning Committee meeting of the Conway County Borough Council, where we will be attending remotely. We will take things slowly, so every application gets due consideration. All microphones will be muted unless you indicate you wish to speak. Please use the raised blue hand function, at which point I will call out your name and wait for you to turn on your microphone. When you have finished speaking, please press the lower hand on your screen. Okay. We do have public speakers for some of the planning applications today, and they will be introduced at the appropriate time. I would remind members that this meeting is being recorded. The aim is to live stream the meeting, but if that fails for whatever reason, the meeting will continue and the recording will be uploaded onto the council's website at the conclusion of the meeting. I would also like to remind members that translation from Welsh to English is available, and I believe the translator has explained the functions that members can use on the buttons. So we move on to the agenda. The first item is apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, 2 apologies, Councillor Andrew Hinchcliffe and Councillor Sue Lloyd-Williams.
Thank you. And no other members' apologies. No, fine. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members want to declare an interest in any of the planning applications under consideration?
Councillor Peter Lewis.
I wish to raise a personal and prejudicial interest in item 047311. And I shall leave the meeting, Chair.
Okay. Is there any others? Any other members declaring interest? No.
Trevor, the reason needs to be stated as.
Sorry, the reason needs to be stated.
So, sorry, it's a personal friend.
Okay. Okay. And you want to leave the meeting for that item, Councillor Peter, yeah? Okay. Okay.
Councillor Dave Cowans.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to declare an interest. I haven't got an agenda, so it's the property adjacent to Clan Roost Road. I'm a personal friend of the applicant.
Okay, Councillor Dave. Yeah. So when those applications come before us, the clerk will ask you to wait in the waiting room. So effectively taking no part in the meeting itself. Okay. Item 3 is urgent matters. I'm not aware of any urgent matters. Jane,
No,
you
Chair.
not? No, thank you. Item 4, this is regard to the minutes of the previous meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 10th of June 2020. Can someone please propose that they are a true record of the proceedings? And can we have a seconder, please?
I propose that, Trevor.
Sorry?
I propose that it's a true record, yeah?
Right,
Okay.
I'll second that, Trevor.
Okay, you've got that, Jane, yeah.
Yeah, can we
Okay.
all vote? All those in favour?
Yeah. All you,
Please show.
yeah, we show in favour. For this item, all you need to do is just raise your hands so I can clearly see if you are supportive of the minutes. Okay.
Brilliant,
members.
thank you.
Thank you. I take it that there's nobody against those minutes, yeah? It's only for a true record. So we move on to item 5. This is the start now of the planning applications. And the first one is code reference 0/47217. It's residential housing estate consisting of 14 new residential dwelling houses. It's an outline application at Windjammers Wine Bar / Nightclub, Towin Road, Belgrano, Abergele. Okay, and I'd now like to introduce the speakers for this particular application. So if I could invite Miss Jane Wenlock to address the committee.
Hello everybody, I'm Jane and I live at number 6 Pennakai, which is adjacent to the proposed planning application.
Can I just remind you that you have 3 minutes to address the committee, and when there's 30 seconds remaining, the committee clerk will remind you when you've completed your 3 minutes. Okay. In your own time, Jane.
Okay, yeah, I'll just read my notes. Plot 14 on the proposed development does encroach my boundary, which is a very sunny aspect of the garden. This will, I presume, restrict light and cast considerable shadows onto the garden, as per point number 27 under the residential amenity. Also, privacy due to the garden of plot 14 also running alongside our boundary, which could increase noise pollution. Also, I'd like to know what is happening to the existing boundary fence, which runs along from number 1 right the way to number 7 Pennakai. I know the devaluation of my property is not a planning consideration, but it will impact this greatly when I choose to downsize for my retirement, as my house was bought as an investment for this purpose. Relating to the biodiversity, having lived at Pennakai for 13 years, I've watched several wildlife species, swallows, swifts, which come back year after year, and several other bird species. Also the presence of bats. I don't believe there's a dawn to dusk survey being carried out. Whether that's been updated, I don't know. Also a mention of the existing trees to be left where possible, and replanting of others to sustain the wildlife is not sufficient on the plan. It's very limiting, with the soft landscaping also causing a negative visual impact. It states the proposal would result in the density of 35 dwellings per hectare, and this is higher than the initial density sought under the policy. The separation distance between the existing and proposed dwellings fails to meet the Householder Design Guide LDP01 requirements. The separation recommendation is 15 metres, so plot 14 falls short of this. Considering the above factors, plot 14 I feel will have a significant adverse impact on my property. So that's really, my feelings on it. I totally agree with the development. It will enhance the area. It's just the 2 houses, mainly 14, so plots 13 and 14, which back onto, the bottom of my boundary.
Okay, thank you very much, Jane.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There was an intention from Councillor Andrew Wood to address the committee, but unfortunately he's not available today. So he's asked me to read out the statement that he would have read out to the committee. And Councillor Andrew says, I will declare an interest as we reside on an industrial estate on Peel Street, next door to the J&T building material supplies. It is non-prejudicial, as they do not sell motorbikes and I don't build houses or sell building materials. In relation to the above developments, I would like to fully support the application and comment as follows. This site is to be used, what used to be an old nightclub from the 1980s, and it has fallen into total disrepair. It is derelict and needs clearing and demolishing for safety reasons. It is not fit for rebuilding. That the outline planning permissions and full planning should be granted, as the new build is not on a floodplain, nor is it likely to flood unduly in the next 1 in 1,000 years. The flooding risk in the NRA report was noted as being 0.1%. I am satisfied with the report's recommendations of the minimum finished floor level of 5.8 metres AOD, with hard standings, estate roads, etc. at 5.65 metres. The existing site levels are between 5.25 and 5.85 metres. During the 1996 Towin floods, this site was not flooded as it is on a slightly higher ground. That adjacent planning for housing has been granted by CCBC for 150 plus homes on the west of the application site on land of the same level. That to the east, the recent new development at Pennakai has had a new build of over 30 houses approximately 12 years ago with no flood issues whatsoever. That this site is suitable for the low-cost affordable housing and needs to be developed in line with the properties that exist to the east and are to be established and border on the west. We need to be mindful that there will be a need for additional places at our local schools, doctors' surgery, etc., which will be affected by any new housing bills that are planned. I believe that new Band B schools are presently at the planning stage by the Welsh Government and should be designed to accommodate the next 30 to 50 years of growth. I trust and I hope this derelict site can be brought into a suitable housing use for our local residents and young families. Its current appearance spoils the natural landscape between the road and the sea wall, and I cannot see any further useful occupation for the land that is sandwiched between two developments of housing that could be considered or would be desirable. Regards and best wishes, Councillor Andrew Wood. There we have it, members. Now, perhaps I could ask the planning officer who's dealing with this if he wants to refer to the addendum or bring us up to date with any information.
Can you unmute, please, Carrie?
Yeah, it's Katie Roberts will
Okay.
represent the item. I'm not sure if she's. I can read out from the addendum if necessary. While we're waiting from Katie, I'll just refer to the addendum.
Yeah.
We have had a further representation from the tree officer, and what he says with you'll recall that we received an additional plan showing the tree constraint plan based on the amended site layout. And what the tree officer says is that with regards to the plan showing crown spreads
Yes,
and
Katie Roberts. Oh, she's there.
protection areas, the crown spreads appear to be generic and they need to be accurately shown on the development side at least. And then he says that submitted tree report provides the crown spread dimensions which need to be shown on the plan. We also need the location and type of protective fencing shown. Given the above, the tree officer maintains his objection to the proposal. The applicant has requested that the requirement for an amended plan be controlled by condition. However, we would bring your to attention, this is an application where the layout of the state isn't a reserved matter. So we feel that the tree constraints issue needs to be addressed at this stage rather than left to the reserved matter stage. The recommendation has been amended slightly. We are still minded to grant conditional planning permission, but this is subject to a revised tree constraints plan, demonstrating to the satisfaction of the development and building control manager that the development would not adversely affect the integrity and viability of the trees along the western boundary. But if this issue isn't resolved within 30 days or an agreed extended period, we also request authority to refuse the application. So that is the amended recommendation that is being put to the committee. I don't know through the chair whether Katie has anything else to add to the addendum.
No, there's nothing further to add.
You're happy with that. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'll now open the debate for members, and please indicate whether you want to speak by pressing the raised hand icon on the screen. And when you finish speaking, please press the lower hand on your screen. If for any reason I do not see that you want to speak, please feel free to interject. You are able to switch on your own microphones if required please try and avoid interrupting any other speaker. Okay, members, it's open for debate now. I
Okay,
haven't got any.
Councillor Trevor, Councillor Dave Cowans has indicated he wishes to speak.
Right, okay. Councillor Dave, unmute your mic. Councillor, there we are. Okay.
Yes,
Councillor
thanks,
Dave.
Chairman. I think this application for this brownfield site is ideal. And I would propose that we accept the amended recommendations of the planning officers. Thank you.
Yeah, is that a proposal, Councillor Dave?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Any other members want to comment on this application?
Councillor Pauline?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I do like this planning application because it has got starter homes for young people, and the site is a terrible mess at the moment. It's the former Windjammers building, which is in derelict disrepair, and it really does need tidying up. And as for the school aspect of it, we are having a new school. You know, we are waiting for it at the moment, so it might be a problem initially, but you know, there's a new school going to come to Abergele within the next couple of years. I was just listening to what Jane Wenlock was saying about the house behind us is going to be 14 metres away, but on the LDP it's 15 metres away. I don't know what. Can anyone answer that? Would it? Does it have to be 15 metres? Would that be Kerry?
I can clarify that point.
Katie, yeah.
The house is actually, it varies from a minimum of 14 metres up to a maximum of 16 metres from the neighbouring property, and for the most part it is either 15 or more metres away from the neighbouring property, so on balance we feel that the separation distance is sufficient.
Okay.
Pauline. Thank you. I've got nothing else to say at the moment. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen Hunter.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, thank you. This is actually on my ward, and I can't remember for how long people have been asking me when is something going to be done with this land. I'm right behind this proposal. It's exactly as Pauline stated, and Dave, the housing mix is exactly what we're looking for. 7 2-bedroom houses, no garages, the ideal starter homes, but there's a nice mix of 3s and a couple of 4s in there for larger families again. They're more of a starter home even at that size. So yeah, fully behind it. The proposal, yeah, let's sort out what we need to do with the trees. I noticed in Councillor Wood's statement there was references to flooding, but that doesn't come up. NRW, who we always thought might be a problem with this, have not raised any issues. So I was going to propose, but I'm more than happy to second Councillor Dave's proposal that we proceed with this and accept the recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah. Was that a seconder, was it, Alan?
Yeah, because
the sound was a bit off on here.
Yeah, second it.
Okay. Any other members want to comment on this application?
Yeah, Councillor Yvonne and Councillor Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Just need a point of clarification. I am supportive of this development purely because anything that's going to be a betterment in that area, there's a definite requirement for this area of land. If it gets through the TAM 15 floodgate, so to speak, then we're happy. I just need to ask Katie a question on something that's in the conclusions, really, and that's what is the applicant's fallback position? there's no clarification on that. What is that, please, Katie?
Just bear with me a second. I'll just double check the conclusion. I don't recall, to be honest, mentioning a fallback position.
Okay.
Perhaps I can
The
answer that.
conclusion states that the site falls within the settlement boundaries where residential development is generally encouraged. But I can't see any reference to a fallback position. If you could point me in the right direction.
Right, it's the second line from the bottom of the conclusion. Basically, whilst the application is a departure from national and local planning policies on settlement boundaries and green wedges, the applicant's fallback position must be given significant weight. What is the significant weight given to that fallback position? That's all I need to know.
I don't think that's the report for the Windjammers.
Oh, do you know what? You're right. I do apologise. I was under the wrong conclusion. Apologies. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Is there any other members who want to speak on this application?
Yes, Councillor Nigel and Councillor Phil Capper.
Councillor Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for Katie. It says that the site location is in the settlement boundary of Kimmel Bay, and I just wondered whether that was correct.
The settlements of Towin and Belgrano and Kimmel Bay are all grouped together into one settlement boundary.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure, even though the Town and Kimmel Bay Town Council weren't approached for their views, would have supported this. I'm very mindful of the fact that the residents in the east of the county and the builders in the east of the county have been limited in the ability to provide housing for the local residents and the families. So I fully support this application. We are desperate for housing in the east of the county, unlike the rest of the county. And we appreciate any development that we can bring forward in the east, I feel. I would like to ask, at this stage of outline planning, will there be any, can we look for any section 106 contributions? And the reason I ask is, to the west of the site, the bus stop is not a covered bus stop, it's an open bus stop, and there is very little cover for the residents should they want to use public transport. And I just feel that if there is a section 106, we should look at providing a decent bus stop for the residents that will be living on this estate.
There's a financial viability assessment that was submitted as part of the application, and that showed that the development provided a negative residual value. So in this instance, no planning obligations have been sought.
Okay, disappointed, because that bus stop needs updating, but thank you anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. Councillor Phil Capper.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask Katie, will the issue with the trees have any impact on the concerns raised by the Speaker with regard to the locations?
It won't do, no, because the trees in question are adjacent to the western boundary, whereas the Speaker is adjacent to the eastern boundary of the site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phil. Does any other members want to speak?
Yes, Councillor Pauline and Kerry Thomas wants to come in.
Okay. Councillor Pauline.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Councillor Nigel's already asked the question that I wanted to ask about the bus stop. So I don't need to speak now. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kerry Thomas. Kerry.
Yes, it was in relation to a previous question, but even though it's already been partially answered, I'd just like to point out that there is a fallback permission on this site, in the sense that there is a lawful development certificate to use the grounds as a pub, really. So that's something that you do need to bear in mind.
Okay, thanks for that, Kerry. Any other members want to speak? No. Okay then, members, we'll move on to the vote. We've had a proposer and a seconder to approve the application. Can
Trevor?
we, sorry. You want to
Could
come
I,
back
could
in,
I possibly
Nigel?
ask a question? Yeah, could I possibly ask a question, Chair?
Yeah.
Would it be possible for us to ask the applicant if he would be willing to provide monies for a bus stop?
Yeah. Katie, I mean, I suppose we could ask, but I don't know.
I'm
Do you want to?
surprised.
Sorry.
I'm surprised there's no Section 106 money coming forward. To be honest, I'm quite surprised. And
Yeah.
If I could just say that that's something that you could consider including in your recommendation. But as I said previously, I would remind you that the financial viability assessment was submitted. It was assessed by our planning policy section, and they did conclude that it produced a negative residual value, so that the development wasn't viable for any financial contributions. So just bear that in mind.
Well,
yeah.
Could I make a counter or an alter proposal that we approve the application, but with the proviso that money towards a suitable bus stop? Because I think we're trying to encourage people to use public transport in this day and age, and yet having stood at that very bus stop in the middle of winter, it is something that I would not like to repeat. And we're asking people to live in this area, which is very open, very windy, and there's no protection there. And I think it's the least that we should be doing as a county. So I would like to propose that we include that in the approval, subject to the installation of a suitable covered bus stop at that site.
Okay, members. Is there a seconder for Councillor Nigel's proposal? No.
I think Carrie Thomas, do you want to come in quickly? If you unmute, please.
Thank you. It's just as a point of protocol, really, that whenever you are considering Section 106 contributions, you need to bear in mind the statutory tests that apply to all Section 106 obligations. So you need to consider, first of all, is the contribution being sought necessary to make the development permissible in planning terms? Secondly, whether the contribution relates fairly in scale and kind to the development, and thirdly, whether the contribution is reasonable. I'm not going to influence you either way as to whether you should or should not be seeking a Section 106 contribution, but I would just ask you to bear those considerations in mind. And if you do decide to pursue the Section 106 obligation, that you do so with regard to those three statutory tests.
Thank you. Members, you've heard the advice given by the planning officer. Councillor Nigel's made a proposition. As yet, I'm not aware that he's been seconded. Is that correct? Yeah. So, Councillor Pauline?
Councillor Pauline, are you seconding the proposition?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll take it to the vote, and as I understand it, I'm sure Mr. Peter Brown will advise me that we take the amendment first, which is Councillor Nigel's proposal, which is to approve the application, but include the an agreement towards a bus stop being provided. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's correct, Chair.
Okay. Okay, members. So what we'll do is we'll take this amendment, which is Councillor Nigel's and seconded by Councillor Pauline, and what we'll do is Jane, the clerk, will read out your name, and when you hear your name, please confirm whether you're in favour, against, or abstaining from the vote. So this is for the proposal by Councillor Nigel, which includes the addition to the approval. Okay, members, so
Okay,
Jane,
thank
if you
you,
would like
Councillor
to read the
Trevor.
numbers out.
Okay, Councillor
Yep.
Philip Capper,
In favour.
Councillor Chris Cater,
Approve.
Councillor Dave Cowans,
Approve.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams,
Approved.
Councillor Alan Hunter,
Approved.
Councillor Peter Lewis,
Against.
Councillor Ibor Lloyd,
Kevin Knockall.
Approved.
Councillor Dave Rees,
Approved.
Councillor Austin Roberts,
Yn erbyn.
Against.
Councillor Dave Roberts,
Unmute your microphone, Councillor Dave.
can you unmute him, Barron, please?
No, you're asking to mute. I can't unmute it.
Approve.
Thank you, Councillor Dave. Councillor Nigel Smith,
Approve.
Councillor Ken Stevens,
Unmute your mic, Councillor Ken.
Sorry, new laptop.
There we are.
Go for it. Yeah, why not?
Thank you, Councillor Stevens, and Councillor Trevor.
Well, I'm just abstaining as chairman on this one.
Okay, thank you, members. That's been carried.
That's been carried. Peter, could you give me some advice? Do we need to move on to the other proposition, which was a straightforward approval, which was seconded, or because that has carried the other proposal, do we need to go to the original proposal?
No,
In my view, Trevor, you don't need to go to the other vote.
Okay.
No,
I'll
that's
take
kind
that advice. Okay, thanks, members. So that is approved, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. I believe this is one that Councillor Dave Cowans has declared an interest in. So, Jane, could you sort of move
Yes,
Councillor Dave
Trevor,
to the waiting room? Okay.
Okay, Councillor Dave Cowans is in the waiting room, so we're ready to start,
Okay.
Chair.
Okay, members, this is 0/47298. It's the variation of condition number 3 of planning consents. It's 1/CBA/6419 and 1/10031D. It's the demolition of a barn and the erection of a bungalow and garage to allow for amended plans, land adjacent to 30 Llanrwst Road, Colwyn Bay. And we do have a speaker which is against this application. So could I invite Ms. Eleanor Parker, Carpenter, please?
Afternoon, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, there we are. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll get it right. You have 3 minutes to address the committee, and the clerk will advise you when you've got 30 seconds remaining. Okay?
That's
So,
lovely. Thank you.
when you're ready, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just read out what I've got. I'm speaking on behalf of our client because I work for Cadnap Planning, and our client has concerns over the impact of the development on Brynathan Nursing Home, which is family property, and the wider countryside. Brynathan is a Grade 2 listed building located in the open countryside to the west of Colwyn Bay, and is approached by a driveway accessed from Llanrwst Road, and it is this driveway that in turn provides access to the application site. The concerns relate first and foremost to the fact that the red line of the application site does not appear to correspond to that of the original planning permission, and that therefore it's not possible procedurally to consider the revised plans using a variation of condition as proposed. The revised plans also indicate that the curtilage of the proposed new dwelling appears to extend further into the open countryside and the green wedge than the historic approval, and this is therefore contrary to policy. Also, the metal railings and mature trees that previously formed the tree-lined approach to the listed building have been removed by the applicant, and this detrimentally affects the approach to and the setting of the listed building. The many mature trees that were cut down have undoubtedly resulted in a detrimental impact on the landscape and the ecology of the area. And we also feel that the proposal means that the access driveway is no longer safe for the residents of the home, who are obviously more elderly. While it's accepted that there is an extant permission for the erection of a dwelling, development was started for the revised design prior to receiving planning permission, which is a slight concern. Revising the scheme using a variation condition means that it's more difficult to attach the conditions required to the erection of the dwelling that would reduce the impacts on the access and the setting of the listed building or the landscape. We believe that conditions are required to ensure that traditional fencing and appropriate landscaping and planting form part of the scheme, as is the removal of permitted development rights to prevent the house and lands later being altered or extended without requiring planning permission. Therefore, request on behalf of our client that permission is refused for the reasons outlined and set out in our representation letter submitted on his behalf. Notwithstanding this, if permission is granted, we request that appropriate conditions are attached regarding the removal of permitted development rights, landscaping and boundary treatments. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Eleanor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've also got a speaker in favour of the application. So could I invite Mr. Peter Lloyd to address the committee? Have we got Mr. Peter Lloyd there?
Yeah, Peter has joined us, Chair. He just needs to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Right.
Hi.
Okay, Mr. Lloyd. Yeah, I'm sure you're used to this procedure by now, but you've got 3 minutes to address the committee, and we'll remind you when you've got 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you.
You'll not need to do the 30-second buzz, I'm afraid. I will be very brief, Councillor, and set out to you that the committee report very clearly and firmly sets out the key main issues for you. I will just focus your minds on 2 of those key considerations, really. Firstly, the history of this site and what it permits to be developed there, and the impact of the development on its setting. The history of the site actually is fundamental to your considerations today. The previous owner secured both building regulations approvals and addressed necessary planning conditions so he could build the house lawfully and legitimately when he needed to. He carried out works to form a slab, drive and drainage to implement that historic permission. As the history section of the report actually tells you, last year the council granted a lawful development certificate confirming the house, the historic house if you like, can continue to be built. As a material consideration, that history and potentially lawful alternative future actions, that's the fallback position that Councillor Reaver mentioned before, must carry significant weight in your decision making today, and the report acknowledges that. Developing the extant permission, which has all its planning conditions dealt with and all its permitted development rights still intact, remains an option. When Cadw's decision to list Brynathyn, when the Green Wedge was designated and when the nursing home was in fact bought, the planning permission was a matter of public record. Your officer report tells you that this dwelling is consistent in scale with that previously approved, that it wouldn't have a materially greater impact on the Green Wedge, and that the principle of development is set. Further, it tells you the proposal would not differ considerably in scale, footprint or height than the approved scheme, and would continue to be set into the rising land behind it. Notably, paragraph 17 states it would have no more impact on the character or setting of the listed building, which is 100 or so metres to the northwest. Overall, then, your officers tell you the proposal complies with development plan policies on design and appearance. So even if you judge this contemporary dwelling harmed the Green Wedge or the setting of Brynathyn, you must still give significant weight to the fallback as a material consideration that something else would in fact be built here. I hope you can support delivery of this contemporary house this afternoon, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Thank you. Okay, members. Bring the planning officer in now. I think that's Mr. Kerry Thomas, is it? Yeah. Yeah.
Can you unmute, please, Carrie?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
There is an additional item to report in the addendum in that there's been a response from the tree officer. What he says that although the site has some attractive trees growing on and around it, there was quite a high number highlighted for removal in a tree safety report early in the year. On the receipt of the report, I inspected the trees and had to agree with the findings of the report in terms of what was considered to be safe or otherwise. Works were subsequently carried out and safety works completed as specified, including the removal of trees. Shortly after completion of the works mentioned above, further works, including removals, were undertaken by contractors acting on behalf of Scottish Power to ensure the safety of their lines. In terms of the planning application, I have no objection to the proposal, but would like to see a robust scheme of mitigation planting included, should the proposal receive consent. There is also something in the addendum in relation to the possibility of removing permitted development rights. Permitted development rights are basically rights to carry out alterations to dwellings and also to carry out development within the curtilage of dwellings within certain strict parameters. As the agent has pointed out, there are no permitted development rights haven't been removed on the existing permission. It is something which we feel that the committee could give consideration to, and effectively to ensure that any further development would be subject to planning control. It wouldn't necessarily prevent further development, but there would be an application process involved in assessing further development. So it's something that could be justified on the basis that this is essentially, although it's the application's been submitted on the basis of a previous permission, it is effectively would create a new permission. The agent for the objector mentioned earlier concerns that the curtilage of the property could be extended. There's no, the site plan on the current application doesn't identify a site boundary. So if the application were to be approved, we would be looking at identifying the curtilage that's identified in the original planning permission. The Section 73 application can't extend the site boundaries, so it would have to be restricted to the area that was originally granted under the original permission. I don't know whether you want to see slides of the building drawings and showing a comparison between existing and proposed, but if members do wish to see drawings, I can ask Julia to run the presentation for you.
Members? Councillor Peter, yeah.
I think it would be helpful to see the drawings, Chair.
Okay, fine. Okay, Kerry, if you could ask Julia to run the slides or whatever it is we've got. Thank you.
So effectively what you have here, I asked Julia to bring up the slide showing this is a scanned copy of the permission that was granted in the 1980s. And if Julia could move on to the next slide, slide 14, thank you. The permission is for a split level dwelling, so it's 2 stories at the front, and if you move on to the next slide, it's 1 story at the back. And then slide 16 shows a split level dwelling. It is quite what you might call a dated design. It's not something which we would be keen to improve nowadays. I'll ask Julia if she can move on to the drawings of the current application. So she's just going. So what you have before you is an application which is for it's a similar footprint in terms of area, but it does involve a steeper roof pitch, so it is going to be a higher building overall. However, we do feel on balance it is an improved design to the one that was approved in the 1980s. There's a better relationship between the windows, there's a better elevational treatment, and so we recommend approval on that basis.
Thank you, Kerry. Okay, members, I'll open it up for debate now. I believe on my screen that we've got Councillor Evo to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Glad everybody else is caught up. Quick question is on the size and scales of fenestration. We obviously haven't got the luxury of going around and seeing this house potentially in its setting and seeing what other buildings have got in the way of windows around them. So I'm just going to ask the officer, Kerry, if he doesn't mind, how are other houses in that area in the way of fenestration, similar size or?
Sorry. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go on.
Yeah, there are quite a mixture of house types in the area. Some of them are more modern, some of them are more traditional, but Nathan is one of the more traditional ones. Unfortunately, we don't have photographs, although we've got photographs of the site we could show you, we don't have photographs of the surrounding dwellings.
In your opinion, it would take its setting well under the current design?
I think on balance it is a slight improvement to what's already been approved in terms of the relationship between the window openings on the front elevation. It is better design, it's slightly taller, but that has to be balanced against the fact that it's overall a better elevational treatment.
Yeah, so it's okay in its setting?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, well, we pay our officers to recommend, and I will back that recommendation. So I propose that we, due to it already having an extant, due to the recommendation from the officer, I would like to propose this recommendation.
Okay. I've got Councillor Chris Cater to speak now. Councillor Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do know this site, and I don't feel that it would have the impact that Councillor Evo was just a little bit concerned about there and wanting reassurance on. I think that the main, one of the big factors in determining this is the lawful status of the existing permission, and I fully understand that. It's set out very well in paragraph 12 of the report. So I would like to second Councillor Ivor in that we should go with the officer's recommendation to grant planning permission. However, I am aware of this factor of the green wedge, and I think fellow committee members will know that I'm always concerned about undermining the green wedge status in an area, and I wouldn't want this green wedge to be undermined, the openness and other factors concerning with it. So I was wondering whether Councillor Ivor would just add to the proposal that we would include a condition removing the permitted development rights so that further additions couldn't be made automatically to this building without planning permission. Would Councillor Ivor be happy with that addition to the proposal?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I second that then. Thank you.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think Chris has already beaten me to it. So, yeah, I'm happy to support this application and follow the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. I'm not aware of any other members who want to speak with a little blue hand, of course, but Jane, you can't see anybody else.
No, Chair, nobody else has indicated they want to speak.
Fine. Well, we've had a proposal and a seconder to go with the officer's recommendation, which is to approve. Is there any other recommendations, members? No. Okay, we'll move to the vote. And as before, Jane will read your name out and you say whether you're for the proposal and seconded to approve the application, or whether you're against, or whether you're abstaining. Okay, Jane?
Sorry, Chair, can I please clarify? Did Councillor Cater want a condition regarding the green
as I understand
development
it,
rights?
as I understand it, Councillor Chris, with the agreement to Councillor Ivor, that they would approve the application, but there would be a condition on it that they will remove the permitted development rights on this. And I'm sure they'll put me right if I've got that wrong.
No, that's right. That's absolutely right. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Okay, members. Yeah. Okay, Jane, if you would like to go through the list again.
Okay, Councillor Philip Capper.
In favour.
Councillor Chris Cater.
In favour.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
Approved.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
favour.
In favour.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
In favour.
Councillor Ivor Lloyd.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Rees.
In favour.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Ken Stevens. Councillor Ken Stevens.
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Trevor Stocks.
Abstain, Jane.
Okay, thank you, Chair. That's been carried.
Okay, thank you, members. Now, if we move on to the next application, which is 0/46130, it's the conversion of the John Braddock, formerly the Queen's Lodge building, to provide 14 apartments and 3 townhouses, demolition of the former Mary Bamber Convalescent Centre, and construction of 46 apartments, 42 new dwellings, and the demolition of all other buildings and structures, associated works and car parking, hard and soft landscaping, including areas of open space. The John Braddock and the Mary Bamber Convalescent Centre, Queen's Avenue, Colwyn Bay. And we do have a speaker, and I can invite Mr. Daniel Connolly to address the committee. Have we got?
Thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
There we
Daniel.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I'm Daniel Connolly.
Yeah, you've got 3 minutes, Daniel. To,
yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'll be very brief. So I'm Executive Director of Herod and Connolly, and we're the planning agents for the application. And as I say, I've got a very brief statement to make in support of this application. But I'd first like to place on record and commend officers in the way in which they've worked with the applicant on this application. We started work in December of 2017 with officers, and whilst it's been a very long process, we've got there, and we now have a scheme that's evolved such that we're now in receipt of a very positive recommendation to grant permission for our proposals. This is a priority regeneration site for the council, and the proposal before you will positively transform this previously developed site and help the council meet its obligations to bring about sustainable development in accordance with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015. Legislation secures a presumption in favour of sustainable development that accords with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. In this instance, there are no such other material considerations, and officers have pointed out that the proposals are consistent with the relevant provisions of the development plan in every respect, with no objections from any officers or statutory consultees. Proposals will bring about significant benefits, including the provision of much needed market and affordable homes, the restoration of a listed building, and the provision of public open space both on and off-site. As a result, I respectfully request that you grant planning permission in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I think now that we've had the speakers, I think Katie Roberts, the planning officer, wants to bring members up to date with a verbal update. Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to update you in relation to paragraph 58 of the committee report makes reference to a commuter's sum being required to provide crossing facilities at the junction between Hillside Road and Queen's Avenue. But the Highways Authority have since confirmed that these works can be included within the Section 278 agreement with the Highways Authority, and as such, the commuted sum is no longer required. But they do request a commuted sum for active travel improvements within the area, which amount to a total of £5,000. Discussions are currently ongoing with the Highways Authority regarding the nature and the location of those works to determine whether they meet the tests in the SIL regulations, and officers request delegated authority in this regard. I'd also just like to take you through some photographs of the site. It's quite a large site, so I think it's imperative that you get a good understanding of different parts of it. So if I could just ask Julie just to run through the photographs, and I'll run through each slide in turn if you just bear with me. So the first slide shows an aerial photograph of the site, which is outlined in yellow, and it just gives you an idea just of the size of the site and also the extent of vegetation within the site. And then moving on from there, I'll take you through all the different photos of different parts of the site. So this photograph is the principal access to the site, which is on Queen's Drive. And the next two slides show the site either side of that principal access. So that's those two photographs. The next three photographs, so this is the entrance that you would take through that principal access, and this is just the sweeping drive that leads up to Queen's Lodge. So this is the first of three of the slides showing you travelling up the driveway. So yeah, if we could just go through to the third one as well. And that's the first view that you would get of the Queen's Lodge building. The next three photographs show you the principal elevation of Queen's Lodge. If we could just take you through the next two as well. And the next photograph just shows you the main entrance to the building. So it gives you an idea of some of the features which the building has. Turning to the next three photographs, these show the side elevation of the building. And as you can see on the right hand side, that's the more modern addition to the building. And the next four slides, they show you the land to the west of Queen's Lodge, which is where the old bowling green was located. So this also gives you an idea just of how dense the vegetation is just along the site boundaries. I'll just take you through those. This is a photograph of the walled garden, which is located to the west, to the east of Queen's Lodge, and is an important feature within the grounds. And then the next two slides show you the Mary Bamber building. So you can see that is a more modern building in comparison to Queen's Lodge. And then the next three photographs just show you the land that's just to the south of the Mary Bamber building. And then the next slides, you'll see the site from the highways that surround the application site. So this is the access to the Mary Bamber building, which is on Queen's Avenue. And this is looking in the northwestern direction, and you can see that the application site is on the left-hand side. This is a photograph essentially of the opposite view. So looking in the opposite direction, and the site is on the right-hand side. You can see the stone boundary wall there. The next photograph, this is stood from the principal access, looking in the northwestern direction, and the application site is on the left. Again, you can see the stone boundary wall. The next slide, this is taken from the junction between Puttercrossland Avenue and the old highway. The site is on the left-hand side. And the next slide, this is just taken further down on the old highway. Again, the site is on the left and you can see the stone boundary wall. Again, the next photograph is taken in the opposite direction. This is at the junction between Coed Road and the old highway, the site being on the right-hand side in this instance. Again, you can see the stone boundary wall. The next photograph is taken in the same position, but just looking down Coed Road, so you can see, again, the site on the left. And the last photograph should be of number 28 Coed Road, which is the detached bungalow within the site. I just wanted to give you an idea, just like I say, of the views surrounding the site, but I would bear in mind that whilst it is well screened when those photographs were taken, the screening would be less during the winter months. I'd just like to take you through the proposed plans as well, if I may. If Julia could just bring those up. This one is obviously just the location plan, showing the location of the site. The second plan that's the existing site plan. The third plan, this shows you the structures that are to be demolished. They're coloured in red. The next plan, this is quite useful because it just gives you an idea of how the different dwellings within the site are grouped. So you've got section 1, which is where the new build apartments would be located. Section 2 is an area of detached houses, which are of a more modern design, sorry, I should have said. Area 3 are detached dwellings which would be located within the walled garden, and these have a more traditional design. Area 4 contains the dwellings which are of a higher density, and these include a greater mix. So there's detached, semi-detached and terraces properties there. Section 5 is where there's an area of detached dwellings which are of a more modern design. And then area 6 is the Queen's Lodge building, which is to be converted into apartments. And the two pockets of the green coloured areas are the areas of open space. So on the next plan, we'll show you the actual site layout. So it'll give you an idea of the layout of the site, the density. The next slide shows you the proposed elevations of Queen's Lodge. So you can see on the top left hand side there's the extension that's proposed, and then on the bottom right hand side you can see the smaller extension that's proposed to the front. The next 3 slides show the floor plans of the proposed apartments and townhouses. The next 3 slides will show you the proposed new build apartment blocks, Block A and Block B. The next slide shows you all of the proposed dwellings, so you can see the appearance of each of the house types. So as you can see, you've got house types A through to G, they're the more modern design, and then you've got the house types C, which are within the walled garden and therefore have a more traditional design. And I'll just let Julia take you through the next slides, which are the individual house types just in more detail. And then lastly, we've just got plans showing various site levels throughout the application site. Thank you, Juliet.
Okay, Katie? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks very much for that presentation. Okay, members. I haven't got any names down here yet, but I'm sure somebody will want to say. Councillor Ken Stevens. Councillor Ken. Unmute your mic, Councillor Ken. There we are.
Okay, it's a massive development, Chair. Massive development. I'm surprised that the highway officer has said that this is going to put a strain on the existing roads around there. I'm surprised about that. I realise there's parking on site, but they've still got to get off and onto the estate somehow, haven't they? Can we have a comment about the highways officer about that?
Richard, do you want to make a comment? Just unmute, Richard. There we are.
Sorry, I was just getting a bit of trouble. There's extant permission on the site already, and taking that into account, we have asked for quite a number of improvements from a pedestrian safety perspective. We have also asked and advised the planning for some 106 mitigation, but we've not been successful in getting that.
Okay.
And 106 in relationship to what? Sorry, you missed that bit.
With road safety, to enhance road safety, we asked for a bit more, but we've not managed to get everything we requested, as it wasn't deemed reasonable with the scale of development, I believe.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Kent. Councillor Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Got a couple of questions for the officers. Trees. What's happening with the trees? There seems to be, well, the town council reckon there's going to be possibly 269 trees demolished. What does our tree officer think about that? Have they been up? He or she been up to have a look? Is there anything happening there?
Yeah, the tree officer's been heavily involved with the application, and whilst there are some trees that will be felled to accommodate the development, the more important and the more significant trees will be retained, and for that reason he doesn't raise any objection to the application.
Okay, and my next question, Chair, if I can, is parking. Seems quite a way from the and quite a way up the hill. There's over 100 residences going to be on this site. How are we fixed for parking? Don't see anything in the report.
The report states that the highways officer is satisfied that the parking complies with the LDP policy.
So what's the number, Katie? Do we have a number? Parking spaces?
I wouldn't know the total number of parking spaces off the top of my head, no.
So on the apartments, we've got 2 lots of apartments, have we? 46 and 14. What's the parking spaces on the 46 apartments? How many parking spaces would that provide for that site?
I'll just bring up the site plan. So for the proposed apartment blocks, the new build Block A and Block B, there is a total of 47 spaces proposed.
For both blocks?
Pardon?
For both blocks?
So there's, for both blocks, yeah. So there's sorry, not 47, there's 59. So if you look at this site plan, if Julia could just bring up the site plan, I'm not quite sure if you'd be able to zoom in on the apartment blocks A and B.
That's the development.
Julia, is it possible to bring up the site plan? So it's slide 5, yeah. So if you can make out in on the slide in the top right hand corner, you can see blocks A and blocks B. There's 12 parking spaces that are proposed just to the left of block A. There's another 12 that are proposed just to the top of block B, and then there's 35 spaces that are proposed just to the bottom of both block A and B. So there's a total of 49 spaces for the apartment blocks.
And is it recommended to be that low in the town regulations? I thought we had to provide more parking than that amount.
Well, the LDP and the SPG recommends a maximum of 1 space per bedroom, but the application
maximum or a minimum. Is it a maximum or a minimum?
Maximum.
It's a maximum.
A maximum of 1.
A maximum of 1 space per bedroom. So as the application is supported by a planning statement which does include a parking assessment, which is also included within the transport assessment, and the highways officer is satisfied that given the location of this particular site in relation to public transport networks, that the parking that's proposed is sufficient.
Okay, thank you, Katie. I must tell that to my neighbour who's got 5 cars for him and his wife. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Nigel. Yeah, I think what happened is years ago, historically, they used to have parking standards which was quoting minimum, and then they went to this maximum. Don't ask me what the reasoning was behind that, but there we are. But it does say on paragraph 5B1 in the report that the car parking is to be provided on site in accordance with policy and therefore considered acceptable. So that's from the actual written report. So if I could bring in Councillor Dave Cowans. Dave?
Yes, thanks, Chairman. Obviously, this site's very important in the infrastructure of Colwyn Bay, and I think the officers should be congratulated for producing such an aesthetic development of it. There's still an enormous amount of open space left on the site. It has not been blitzed with houses. I would therefore propose or accept the officers' recommendations and say thanks to them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dave. Councillor Pauline? Councillor Pauline?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Queen's Drive, now is that a one-way street or is it two-way traffic?
Two-way traffic, yeah.
It's two-way traffic, is it? Because from the main entrance drive, I noticed on the photos and then again on the map that's just was put on the screen last, there's quite a sharp bend. If you say you're coming out of the development, there's quite a sharp bend. Now, isn't that going to be a hazard of cars coming out around that bend? Because you turn right and then there's another bend immediately afterwards. That's what I was looking at. I don't know, would that go to Richard?
Katie, do you want to comment on that, Katie?
Oh, Katie, yeah.
Yep, the highways officers haven't raised any concerns about access or visibility from the proposed access.
Yeah.
Oh, so what you're saying is probably left-hand turn only then? because there would be a problem turning right, wouldn't there?
Well, the principal access to the site at the moment, it leads onto two-way traffic. That would remain the case if the development was built. But like I say, the highways officers haven't raised any concerns about the use of that access, whether you turn left or right exiting the development.
Yeah, I just think it would be very dangerous to turn right out of that development, because the road, it is quite windy, and there is quite a bend there. I just thought I'd just point that out. Also, Queen's Lodge that's going to be converted. I know there's a couple of extensions on it, and obviously the outside features are going to be kept. Is there any sort of original inside features that are going to be kept in that building at all?
Yep. So there's an internal inspection that's been carried out, and there are some features that will be retained, but unfortunately the main features that would be of interest have been lost over time, just through general development of the building, and also through later kind of vandalism and theft. But there is plans to maintain, more so in the communal areas, the features that are of interest.
Okay, thank you, Katie. I'm just really concerned about that turning, going right, going out, that's all. I don't know if anybody...
If I could just comment on that, Councillor Pauline, I know the area very, very well. It is in my ward. And whilst I know that there's going to be an increase in traffic, you don't see a lot of traffic round there. I drive around there quite a lot, and it's surprisingly quiet. The only one you get further on is when you get to Crocken Avenue, where you have them dropping and picking up the kiddies from school. It is quite a surprising quiet area, actually.
Okay, all right then.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Trevor.
Councillor Chris Cater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'd like to endorse what Councillor Dave Cowans has said, and in fact, I'm happy to second his proposal to approve this according to the officer's recommendations. I was concerned when it originally came forward that there might be a adverse effect on the Pwllhau Crochan conservation area and the setting of some very beautiful listed buildings around there. But having gone through the application and seen the diagrams and montages and things that we've seen this afternoon, I'm completely satisfied. It is a big area, and as Councillor Dave Cowan says, that the density is nowhere near as high as it could have been if things had been pushed to the maximum. So I'm happy to second Councillor Dave Cowan's there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chris. Councillor Evo.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification, really. Point 8, it says trees within this site are protected by a tree preservation order, yet we're taking 50% of the trees out. I take it these are the trees that are not under a tree preservation order?
Yeah. Katie?
So all the trees within the site are protected, but as I've said, the trees that are to be removed, they're either immature trees or they're of trees that don't have any significant value, and all the trees that are deemed to be of value by the tree officer are retained as part of the development.
Okay, so everything above 30 diameter breast height is being kept. Anything below that's getting wiped out to make space. Is that right?
I wouldn't know the diameters of those that are to be removed, but all I can say is as I've said previously, is that the trees that are due to be removed are deemed acceptable by the tree officer in order to accommodate the development.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to go with it. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Phil Capper. Councillor Phil.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's more by way of a general comment. I think this application and some of the others we've been looking at and considering today demonstrates the value of site visits, and I think we should get back to them as soon as we possibly can. It makes it a lot clearer in one's mind when when considering these applications. So just a general comment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Phil. I agree with you as well. I've got Councillor Dave Cowans wants to come back. Councillor Dave?
Yeah, can I just ask, Chairman, Katie, will the boundary stone wall not be touched?
So for the large part, the boundary wall will be retained, but there will be a new access that's proposed for number 28, well, what is currently 28 Coipeta Road. That at the moment has just a pedestrian access, which will need to be widened to create the vehicle access. But other than that, the stone boundary wall will remain.
Okay. I haven't got any other members down on the screen to speak. So we've got a proposer and a seconder to approve. I'm taking it as per the agenda, Katie, that this was conditional, subject to the planning, the applicant entering into a legal agreement to deliver the planning obligations. Yep.
Can I just speak? Sorry, Trevor, can I just speak?
Yeah.
The recommendation for the tree officer here is that we condition the access to construction through root protection areas. So anywhere where there's requirement for root protection on some of the elder trees, can I put that as a condition, please? And that's the recommendation coming from the tree officer himself.
Yeah. Katie, do you want to respond to that?
Yep, I just to confirm that condition, all the conditions recommended by the tree officer would be included in any planning permission that's granted.
Okay, Councillor Evo, yeah, they have been included. Yeah. Okay, members, we've had a proposer and a seconder. Is there any other propositions? No. Okay, then we'll move straight to the vote. And if I could ask Jane once again to ask members to indicate whether they're for this application, against, or they're abstaining. Jane?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Trevor. Okay, members, Councillor Philip Cather.
In favour.
Councillor Chris Cater.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Cowans.
Favour.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
Favour.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
In favour.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
In favour.
Councillor Ivor Lloyd.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Rees.
In favour.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Oblate.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Roberts. Councillor Dave Roberts, can you unmute, please?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Nigel Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
In favour.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Yeah, abstain, yeah.
Okay, thank you, members. That's been approved.
Thank you, members. We now move on to reference 0/46132. It's the same site. It's the demolition of the Mary Bamber Convalescent Centre, 28 Coipeta Road, the garage and garden structures, and part demolition of the Queen's Lodge, the John Braddock and the Mary Bamber Convalescent Home, Queen's Avenue, Colwyn Bay. Just for members' information, this is the recommendation is to grant conservation area consent. So it's to do with the conservation area, tied in with the previous application, which was for the approval of the development of the site. Okay, members. So we thought we'd put them together, but obviously separate them so that you know that you're now dealing with the consent to grant conservation area. Yeah. So, does any members want to speak? Sorry, Katie, do you want to add anything further to your previous presentation?
No.
No. Okay. Okay, members. I've got Councillor Chris Cater. Councillor Chris.
Yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Dave if he wants to propose this, or if he doesn't, I'll propose it myself. But happy to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, Councillor Dave, do you want to respond? Councillor
Yes,
Chris wants to know where you're proposing that.
I'll certainly propose the recommendation.
Fine, and I take it, Councillor Chris, you will second it. Yeah. Thank you very much. I haven't got any other members down to speak on it. Obviously, members have debated it as the previous planning application. So, members, Jane, if I could ask you then to ask the members whether they're for, against, or abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Philip Capper.
In favour.
Councillor Chris Cater.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Cowans.
In favour.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
In favour.
Councillor Alan Hunter. Councillor Alan Hunter.
In favour.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
In favour.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Rees.
In favour.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
In favour.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain, yeah.
Thank you, members. That application has been approved.
Thank you, members. We move on to the next application. I believe Councillor Peter Lewis declared an interest in this item. Yeah, Peter. So if I could ask Jane to just
yes, Chair.
Escort you remotely to the waiting room. Okay, Jane.
Yes, you may
Members,
proceed. Thank you.
This is for the erection of a free-range egg production unit, including silos and associated works at Derwydd, Llanfihangel, Glynmother, Conway. It's Kerry. It's one of yours, Kerry. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that we have received a revised ammonia deposition report, which identifies a number of scenarios in relation to the proportion of manure that's deposited outside the building. There seems to be quite a wide range in the technical evidence of how much manure is deposited that free-range hens deposit outside the buildings, with estimates seem to vary from 7% to 20%. So what's happened is that the agent has submitted a revised deposition report which identifies 3 different scenarios, one based on a figure close to 7%, which the agent feels realistic, a figure based on 12%, which is considered to be pessimistic, and the figure of 20%, which the agent feels is unrealistic, but nevertheless is the proportion indicated by NRW. There's a lot of technical data in the report. I haven't tried to summarize it because it is very technical, but we are awaiting NRW's response to that revised deposition report. So that's why there's a lot of technical evidence going on in the background. However, whichever scenario you look at, there is going to be an improvement compared to the existing situation, and that is because the existing shed isn't fitted with a scrubber. So the new application proposes to build a shed alongside the existing shed and to install ammonia scrubbers in both the existing shed and the proposed new shed. And whilst that does exceed the percentage of critical level that's deemed to be can cause concern in certain wildlife habitats, the agent feels that this would be an improvement compared to the existing situation. So we're simply waiting for NRW to confirm whether that is the case. And if it is the case, then we can proceed to issue planning permission. We have had a response from our own ecologist, which goes into quite, basically summarizes the position with regards to the ammonia levels. She also asked for biodiversity enhancements, and that will be provided in terms of landscaping around the site. So subject to that issue being resolved, we feel that planning permission can be issued, and our recommendation remains the same.
Thank you, Kerry. Councillor Austin Roberts.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Cadeirydd.
Iawn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to ask that we go with the recommendation from the officers on this planning. Well, as we know that the rural industry is changing and the Brexit situation as well. It's only fair that we support these farmers that are ready to go in a different direction. So I would like to go with the recommendation, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Councillor Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to support everything that Austin has said. It's very pleasing again to see farms diversifying and investing in the county. I have every confidence that they will work to address the ammonia issue, and I wish them luck with their new outing with this free-range egg production unit, should it be approved, which I think it may well be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel. Councillor Ivo.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to support this, but there's two things that do spring up. I'd be happier if NRW give it the nod, and secondly, I'd be happier if it was a pest control programme put in place as well. So I'd like to condition it. We put that in there, please.
Kerry, do you want to come back on that? Unmute, Kerry. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with including the first point is a matter which we'll have to resolve before granting permission, and the second matter I think is something which we can include as a condition of the planning permission.
Okay, you're happy with that, Councillor Ivo? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Alan Hunter. Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, without the benefits of a site visit, I'd just like to ask, how rural is this? We've done a few of these over the years, and there's been one I remember we went out to, and there's only, I think, the farmer's house anywhere near the land. And then, of course, there's the one that was of concern to myself that was proposed for Abergele, which in the end didn't go through because it was quite close to a small little hamlet just outside Abergele. So I was just interested to know, how rural is this? I mean, there's already something there from what I've read and what I've heard today. And I certainly agree with what Councillor Evo's said about pest control and being sure with NRW. But somebody could just fill me in about where it is and in relation to any private dwellings, please. Thank you.
Eric. Unmute, Kerry. Yeah. There we are.
It mentions in the report that the new closest properties are located about 125 metres away. I appreciate that is close, but what you have to bear in mind that this is an application for a free-range chicken unit, so it's not comparable with the application we had in Abergele, which was for pullets that would be spending all of their time indoors.
Yeah. Thanks, Kerry. That'll do me. Thank you.
Okay, Alan. Yeah, I think Councillor Ken, did you indicate you wanted to speak? Okay, Councillor Ken.
I just wanted to say basically that according to the map, there's nothing around there, there's nothing immediately next to this thing. But I do worry about the mechanical ventilators pushing the ammonia into the air and the surrounding areas. That does worry me, that, Chair.
Yeah. Well, as we said, it's subject obviously to the NRA coming back with their comments. So thank you for that, Councillor Ken.
If I could clarify on that point, the intention is to have scrubbers within the ventilators that would reduce ammonia emissions, and that's something that's a scenario that's been built into the model. So effectively, would be conditioned so that the scrubbers would be installed both on the existing unit and the proposed new unit.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Ken. I haven't got any other members down to speak. We've had a proposer and a seconder to approve the application. So I take it that there's no other proposals. So if members would like to vote as we did before, so if I can ask Jane to ask the members to indicate whether they're for, against or abstaining. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Can I just ask, does it include the pest control condition?
Yeah, I'll bring in Phil in a minute. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say it. I think the two conditions that were mentioned, one is already part, which is the NRA issue, and that is obviously got to be addressed. And then there was just the second condition that Ivo brought up, and Kerry Thomas said he was quite happy to incorporate that, if my memory serves me right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, we'll go to the vote, members.
Yeah, well, just bear with me, Jane. I think Councillor Phil Capper indicated he wanted to speak.
I was just going to ask the same question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, okay, Phil. Yeah, I hope I've answered it for you. Okay, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor Philip Capper?
Yeah, in favour.
Councillor Chris Cater?
Approve.
Councillor Dave Cowans?
Favour.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams?
In favour.
Councillor Alan Hunter?
In favour.
Councillor Ivo Lloyd?
Obliged.
Councillor Dave Rees?
In favour.
Councillor Austin Roberts?
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Roberts? If you can unmute, please, Councillor Dave.
Where is he? There.
Approve.
That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Nigel Smith?
Approve.
Councillor Ken Stevens?
In favour.
Councillor Trevor Stott?
Abstain, yeah.
Thank you, members. That application's been approved.
Thank you. You want to bring Councillor Peter back in, Jane, before we continue?
He should be with us now, Chair.
Yeah. Are you back with us, Councillor Peter? I just heard him. Oh, he's there. There we are. Okay, thank you, members. We move on to 0/47365. It's interior and exterior refurbishments for the installation of internal partitions and finishes, including the installation of mechanical and electrical works, listed building consent at Glanadon Hall, former civic offices, Abergalley Road, Colwyn Bay. Harry, do you want to?
There's nothing in the addendum.
Present this.
There's nothing in the addendum.
Right, okay. Okay, members, open to you. Any members want to comment on this?
I'm happy to approve the recommendation if nobody's got any comments, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Do we have a seconder for that? Second, Councillor Ken Stevens seconded it. Any other propositions? No. Okay, we'll put that to the vote, and the recommendation is from the officers to approve. So, Jane, if you could ask the members again to indicate.
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor Philip Capper?
In favour.
Councillor Chris Cater?
In favour.
Councillor Dave Cowans?
In favour.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams?
In favour.
Councillor Alan Hunter?
In favour.
Councillor Peter Lewis?
In favour.
Councillor Ivo Lloyd?
In favour.
Councillor Dave Rees?
In favour.
Councillor Austin Roberts?
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Roberts?
Approve.
Councillor Ken Stevens?
In favour.
Councillor Trevor Stott?
Abstain. Yeah.
Thank you, members. The application's been approved.
Okay, thank you, members. And we move on to the next application, which is 24499. It's the demolition of the cottage and farm buildings. It's demolition prior approval at Meadow Lodge, 247 Abergalley Road, Colwyn Bay. Kerry, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to clarify this is not an application for planning permission.
No.
This is an application, this is a prior notification application. which the council has a period of 28 days to determine whether a method statement is required. And then as a result of that, and then can require further information to be provided in the method statement. Now, because that's the period in which the application, the council has the opportunity to request further information, is fixed in the development order. Effectively, it means that we have to ask for delegated authority to be able to determine this, so that we can ensure that the deadline isn't missed. So effectively, it's not up to the planning committee to decide whether or not to approve or not the development. It's simply a matter of determining whether further information is required. We have had a request from the Principal Environment Officer for further information, and I've had a further request since the meeting has started. We've also had a representation from the Town Council in relation to, they want to know whether there's an old fireplace inside one of the buildings, and they want to know whether it can be retained. So those are matters which will be included in the method statement that would effectively become resubmitted to the authority for determination, and we're asking for delegated authority to be able to do this. I understand that there is some urgency in the matter because of the project timing, so we would be grateful if the committee could authorise officers to deal with the matter and the delegated authority.
Thank you, Kerry. Members? I've got any members down. Does any member want to propose or second this application? Well, this authority for it to proceed. Councillor Phil Capper.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I was just wondering why this is necessary and hadn't been done before by the Environment Officer. What's the issue? That, I mean, I've read the report, but it doesn't seem to make it clear. It just seems to be delaying the issue. I was just asking the question what it's all about.
Eric?
Yes, the application has been supported by an asbestos demolition survey. What the Environment Officer says is the asbestos demolition survey is intended to inform the following stages of tendering and the management of the demolition of the building. It does not therefore outline the environmental controls that will be in place when the residual building is demolished and the materials are processed on site for reuse. Therefore, there is an additional requirement for an environmental management plan to be submitted prior to the demolition of the building. This is required to document the measures that will be put in place to control the potential for nuisance to be caused by nearby sensitive receptors during the demolition process. It must also include the general clearance, enabling works, and also the final crushing and processing of any reclaimed aggregates arising from the demolition works. So effectively, it's further information. It's something which, if it was treated as part of a planning application, would be a condition of the planning permission. But we're not dealing with a planning application here. We're simply deciding whether to require that information to be submitted as part of a method statement, which is why there's a rather clumsy approach to dealing with a matter, but it's the matter that's prescribed in the order.
Yeah, it strikes me that it's a clumsy approach. I mean, do we get that with other demolition applications like the one we've had earlier? Or do they already submit their reports on what's happening with the materials?
What would normally happen is that we would require a demolition method statement as a condition of a planning application. In this one, it's a rather odd approach, really, because effectively the applicant, which happens to be the local authority, but it could be any other applicant, simply notifies the local authority that it's intending to demolish. And the local authority then has a period of 28 days to determine whether to request further information in terms of a method statement. It would make things a lot easier if they were combined in one process, but that is not the way the order provides. So we have to work according to what the order provides rather than how we would prefer it to work.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peter Lewis. Councillor Peter? There we are.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose that the officers deal with this and go with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Yeah. Okay, we have a seconder. Councillor Dave Rees. Dave, do you want to speak?
No, I just wanted to propose that we went with the officer's recommendations, but I'm prepared to second it, no problem.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dave. Okay, I haven't got any other members, so members are prepared to vote on this. So Jane, if you could do that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Okay, members. Councillor Philip Capper.
Agreed.
Councillor Chris Cater.
Support, yeah.
Councillor Dave Cowans.
Agree.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
Approve.
Councillor Alan Hunter.
Approve.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
Approve.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd.
Approve.
Councillor Dave Rees.
Approve.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Roberts.
Approve.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
Approve.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain.
Thank you, members. The recommendation has been approved.
Okay. We move on to the next one, which is ENQ/29160, and it is in respect of the Owl Ammonia offshore wind farm. Kerry, do you want to add anything further?
No, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to remind you, this isn't a planning application, and the development consent order application hasn't formally been submitted to the Secretary of State. It's effectively a pre-application exercise to determine two things. Firstly, whether there is a need to carry out a habitat regulations assessment under the Habitat and Birds directives. And secondly, it's to determine the scope of the environmental assessment, and that will cover both the onshore and offshore elements of the project. We have had a further response from the North Wales Minerals and Waste Planning Service. They're requesting consideration be given to safeguarding both onshore and offshore mineral reserves. And they also refer to a matter relating to the draw attention to the Gover landfill site, which comes close to some of the routing options. So effectively, we have to get our response back to the planning inspectorate by this Friday. That's a non-negotiable deadline. But it's essentially an exercise in determining what needs to be included within the scope of the environmental assessment. If there are any matters which need to be included in that, then this is our time to make that known, because otherwise it'll be too late to request further information further down the line. Effectively, I have asked the council departments to provide comments to me. Some have, but we haven't had the full range of comments yet. So again, we're asking for delegated authority to be able to respond to the planning inspectorates on the scoping report.
Thank you, Kerry. No member wishing to speak. Any member want to propose or second this?
I'll propose it again. Trev.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allen. Yeah. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Austin will second that, Jane. Okay. Okay, members, for the final time, if you just indicate whether you're in agreement with that, so you for this inquiry, or against, or abstaining. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, thank you, members. Councillor Philip Capper.
Yeah, agreed.
Councillor Chris Cater.
For.
Councillor Dave Cowans.
For.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams. For. Councillor Alan Hunter.
For.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Dave Roberts. Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor
In
Ken
favour.
Stevens.
No.
Councillor Trevor Stott.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you, members. That's been approved.
Okay, members, well, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the meeting, and can I thank you for your attendance today?
Thank you,
Boulevard,
Chair.
and keep safe.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much,
Thanks, Chair.
Chairman.
Okay.
Diolch,
Thank you.
Trevor.
Yeah, take care.
Ta-ta.